My name is Liya. I am 68 years old, a woman who spent her entire life working, loving, and sacrificing for my family. I raised my only son, Daniel, alone after my husband passed away when Daniel was just 5. Everything I did in life, every struggle, every sleepless night, every tear was for him. I wanted to make sure he had a future, even if I had to bury my own dreams. Daniel was my pride. When he graduated from university, I clapped louder than anyone in the hall. When he got married, I cried tears of joy. I gave him my home when he wanted to start fresh with his wife. I moved into a smaller place just to make sure he had space for his family. People would often tell me, "Liya, you spoil him too much." I would only smile and say, "He's my son. He deserves the best." But as years passed, something began to change. Daniel became distant, colder. Phone calls were rare, visits even rarer. He said he was busy with work, but deep inside, I felt a shadow growing between us. I brushed it off, telling myself, every son becomes busy when building his life. One Sunday, he came to visit me. For a moment, my heart lit up like it used to when he was a boy, but the look on his face was different. His eyes were not warm, they were calculating. He sat across from me, folded his hands, and said words I never thought I would hear. "Mom, you can't live alone anymore. It's time you move into a nursing home." My heart stopped. A nursing home? After everything? I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking, but Daniel didn't laugh. His eyes were cold as ice. And in that chilling silence, I realized my own son was trying to push me out of his life. The next morning, I tried to shake off the heaviness in my chest. Maybe Daniel was just worried for me. Maybe he thought a nursing home meant safety, not abandonment. I tried to believe that. But Daniel came back 3 days later. This time, he wasn't alone. His wife, Claire, was with him. She always had a sharp look in her eyes, like she was judging everything about me. She wasted no time speaking. "Liya, it's not safe for you to live alone anymore. Daniel and I already found a place. It's very comfortable. You'll have nurses and people to talk to. It's for your own good." Her words were polished, but her tone was poignant. My stomach turned. Daniel didn't look at me. He stared at the floor, as if ashamed but not enough to stop. I tried to reason with them. I am not helpless. I cook, I clean, I walk every morning. I don't need strangers to take care of me. Clara smirked. "It's not about what you need. It's about what's best for us all." That has pierced my heart. This wasn't about me at all. It was about them, about getting me out of the way. My son, my only son, sat there quietly while his wife spoke like she owned me. Finally, Daniel sighed. "Mom, this is happening. I've already signed the papers. Next week, you're moving." I felt the room spinning. Signed the papers, without even asking me. My hands trembled as I clutched the chair. That night, when they left, I sat there alone in my silent house. I touched the walls, the photos, the memories that filled every corner, and I realized Daniel didn't see this as my home anymore. To him, I was a burden to be removed. Cliffhanger. My tears dried into something else that night, something darker. A thought whispered inside me, if my son wants to throw me away, maybe it's time he learns what it feels like to lose everything. I kept pretending. I smiled when Daniel called. I nodded when Clara visited with her fake sweetness. But inside, something inside me cracked. Every time I looked at my son, I no longer saw the little boy who held my hand crossing the street. I saw a man who wanted to erase me from his life. The betrayal cut deeper each day. I overheard Daniel talking on the phone once. He didn't know I was in the kitchen. He said, "Once Mom moves out, we can sell the house. The market is high. We'll finally have the money for the bigger place." My knees weakened. So that was it. Not concern, not love, not care, just greed. My homey life's work was nothing but cash in his eyes. I bit my lip until it bled, holding back a scream. How could the boy I sacrificed everything for turn into this? My chest ached, but I refused to collapse. That night, I stood in front of the mirror. My reflection showed wrinkles, gray hair, tired eyes. I whispered to myself, "Liya, you are not weak. You raised a son alone. You built a life from nothing. You will not let him throw you away." But what could I do? My mind was torn between heartbreak and anger, and an idea sparked inside. Mesmo, dangerous, but growing. If Daniel wanted to play games with me, I would play smarter. The days that followed felt like walking through fire. Every corner of my home whispered memories, yet those memories burned instead of comforted me. Daniel kept pushing, sending me brochures of nursing homes, calling them resorts as if I would be fooled. One evening, he brought Clara again. They didn't sit on the couch like before, they stood tall, like judges delivering a sentence. Clara spoke first, her tone dripping with false kindness. Liya, you should start packing. The movers will come this weekend. We'll take care of everything. I stared at her, then at my son. Daniel couldn't even meet my eyes. His silence cut deeper than her sharp tongue. I asked softly, and what about my things? My memories? Daniel finally muttered, we'll store what's important. The rest, well, you don't need so much clutter, won't? Clutter, that was how he saw my life clothes I had worn in my youth, letters my husband had written before he died, the kitchen table where I taught Daniel his alphabet. To him, it was all just clutter. I felt like screaming, but instead I forced a weak smile. I see. Inside, my heart broke into pieces, but I didn't want to show them my tears anymore. That night, I lay awake on my bed, staring at the ceiling. Anger boiled in me, hotter than I had ever felt. Betrayal from strangers is one thing, but betrayal from your own blood, it burns the soul. The next morning, I tried calling an old friend, Miriam. She had been with me since our school days. When she heard my trembling voice, she rushed over. I told her everything, every detail, every code word, every greedy plan. She gasped, covering her mouth. Liya, Daniel can't do this to you. Like he was doing it. Miriam held my hands. You don't deserve this. You gave him everything. If he throws you away, he'll regret it. Her words planted a dangerous seed inside me. Regret, yes, Daniel needed to regret. That evening, I pretended to agree with him. I told Daniel, maybe you're right. Maybe I can't live alone anymore. His face relaxed, as if he had won. Clara smiled triumphantly, like a queen who had conquered a kingdom. But deep in my chest, something cold and sharp had awakened. I wasn't agreeing out of weakness. I was agreeing to buy time. The betrayal became more obvious with each passing day. Daniel no longer visited as a son came like a landlord inspecting property. He walked through the house, making notes, whispering to Clara about renovations and prices. I hid behind the door once and overheard him say, once Mom thought, we can list it within a week. The real estate agent says we'll get a huge profit. Profit, that's what my life had been reduced to. I wanted to burst in and scream, but instead, I kept quiet. My silence wasn't weakness anymore, it was strategy. I began to watch them carefully. Clara was the mastermind. I could see it now. She whispered in Daniel's ear, poisoning him against me. But Daniel allowed it. He had chosen greed over love. That truth hurt the most. Nights were the hardest. I would lie in bed, tears soaking my pillow, asking myself, where did I go wrong? Did I love him too much? Did I make him selfish? The pain of those questions was unbearable. But then, as the pain grew, so did my determination. I started writing down everything I knew: Daniel's habits, his secrets, his weaknesses. He had always been careless with money, always chasing shortcuts, always hiding small lies. Clara was obsessed with status, showing off luxury bags, expensive clothes, but their finances weren't as strong as they pretended. One afternoon, when Daniel left his phone on the table, I saw a message flash on the screen from his bank. It said, overdraft alert. My eyes widened. The golden couple wasn't so golden after all. They were drowning in debt. That's why they wanted to sell my house so badly. They weren't helping me, they were saving themselves. That night, as I sipped tea alone, a thought came to me like lightning. If Daniel is willing to sell me out for money, what if I used his greed against him? I felt a strange energy rise in me. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel helpless. I felt powerful. The next day, I called Miriam again. We sat her day at the kitchen table, whispering like conspirators. I told her my idea. She raised her eyebrows, shocked at first, but then a smile spread across her face. Liya, he said, this is risky, but it could work. It could make him crawl back to you. And that's when I knew he wasn't just reacting anymore. I was planning. Revenge doesn't come in one stroke. It requires patience, silence, and precision. Like a spider weaving its web, I began to prepare. First, I started acting weaker. I coughed more often, held my back when walking, and pretended to forget things. Daniel and Clara were convinced. Clara smirked and said, this proves she needs the nursing home. Daniel nodded, satisfied. Let them think I was fading. It made them careless. Meanwhile, I visited the bank quietly. Miriam came with me, pretending to be my daughter so no one would suspect. I moved certain funds, closed an account Daniel thought he had access to, and secured my savings where only I could reach them. If Daniel wanted to sell my house, he would find no treasure inside. Then I went to a lawyer. With trembling hands, I explained everything. The lawyer listened carefully and said, "If your son is forcing you out for profit, we can't challenge him, but you must stay calm, play along, and gather evidence." Evidence, yes, that was key. I began recording conversations secretly. Every code word, every greedy plan, every insult Clara threw at me, stored them carefully. It felt like collecting weapons for a war I didn't start, but one I intended to finish. The hardest part was controlling my emotions. When Daniel hugged me goodbye one evening, pretending to care, I wanted to slap him, but I smiled instead. When Clara said, "Don't worry, Liya, soon you'll have new friends in the home," I wanted to spit in her face, but I stayed calm, because patience was my sharpest blade. Weeks passed, and their greed grew. They started visiting more often, rushing me to sign papers, pushing me to pack. I agreed sweetly, nodding like an obedient old woman. Inside, I was laughing. One evening, Daniel said, "Mom, once the house is sold, I promise I'll visit you every weekend." I looked him straight in the eye and whispered, "I'll hold you to that, Daniel." He smiled, believing me, but in my heart, I swore he would visit me, but not in the way he expected. They started to notice small things, small enough to let me slip by if I were careless, but big enough to make them stir. Clara's eyes flicked toward me with curiosity more than cruelty. Daniel threw questioning glances. When I forgot a date or misplaced a plate, that was the danger of playing weak. Sometimes the predator grows cautious. One morning, Clara burst into the kitchen like she owned the place. "You packed anything yet?" she asked, tapping her manicured nails on the counter. Her voice was loud, like she wanted the neighbors to hear she was rescuing me from my own life. "I packed what I must," I said, trying to sound frail. "It's taking me longer." I let my hands tremble, let my voice waver. Daniel hovered by the doorway, guilt and impatience battling on his face. They were rushing me because time was money. The faster they closed the sale, the faster their debts could be hidden behind the house's price tag. That was their plan. My plan needed time. Time was the only currency I had left. But time comes with risks. One evening, as I was recording a conversation, a small voice, whispering while Daniel and Clara argued in the living room, he heard the front door open, footsteps, a cough. Miriam walked right in, smiling, and then stopped as soon as she saw Daniel and Clara. There was a freeze, like a drop of water hanging before it falls. "Liya, I thought I'd surprise you," she called, but the surprise turned awkward. Clara's smile vanished. Daniel straightened cold. "Miriam is loyal, but she doesn't play games." She looked at me, then at Daniel. "Everything okay?" she asked to Sharp. The two of them scrambled to look normal. I felt my chest tighten. After Miriam left, I realized my records could be exposed. If Daniel found out about my secret conversations, my lawyer's involvement, my shifted accounts, the whole play could collapse. I had to hide the evidence faster and better. So I changed the plan. I became more reckless, acting weak, more apparent mistakes, more visible forgetfulness so they would get more arrogant. I let Daniel pour coffee and spill it on a stack of boxes. I let Clara find an old letter and scoff at it, let them believe they were winning. But obstacles weren't only their suspicions. The state agent called one afternoon. "We have a buyer eager to make an offer," he said, the kind of voice that makes your heart race. "They want to view next Tuesday." My breath itched. The house was shown before I had everything ready. They could force a faster sale. A sale could be final before my legal challenge had teeth. I told Miriam. She pressed my hand, worry carving lines in her face. "We need more proof," she said. "We need something the agent can't ignore." I nodded. The lawyer's advice echoed in my head. Evidence. Exposure. Come. We set another step. I would plant a seed with the agent, casually, so he would slow things down. I called him, using the voice of an old confused woman. "Oh, Mr. Khan, will the buyers be able to see the attic? I would like to show them my husband's old things." The agent paused. "I'll arrange it," he said, uncertain. Viewing was delayed by a day, just enough. But then something worse happened. Daniel's sister, me brother's daughter, Sarah, called out of the blue. She said, "And Liya, I heard about the nursing home. I don't think it's right." My heart warmed, but I could tell she had spoken with someone, a neighbor, Hakan. Someone who had started gossiping. The neighborhood was a net. Once the name got thrown, it spread. The more eyes on me, the higher the risk. I needed to control the story before gossip became fact. So I did what I had avoided: public action. I agreed to a small community tea with neighbors, pretending to accept my fate. I smiled, told a few made-up tales of per memory, and watched Clara's face flush with triumph. They were proud that the town thought them kind. But the tea had an unexpected effect. A woman named Mrs. Ahmed, who volunteers at the local community center, spoke to me quietly. You know, they say people in homes sometimes lose paperwork. Maybe you should get a checklist of what you want taken. She gave me a small slip of paper with a local charity lawyer's number scribbled on it. It was a small kindness. It felt like a lifeline. If more people began to doubt Daniel's concern and ask questions, their timeline might break. That night, alone in my dim kitchen, I spread my notes across the table, the recordings, the bank notices, Clara's offhand comments about selling when the market is right. I taped the pages together like a map, each line leading to a place I hoped would collapse their confidence. I was ready to move into the final phase of the plan, but plans especially good on us invite desperate moves from the other side. I knew I could not rush. I also knew Daniel would not wait patiently forever. He might act first cruelly, out of fear. The threat felt hollow at first, like a theater actor trying to scare an audience. Then my front gate had small scratches the next morning, like something had been dragged, a plant pot tipped over. Someone had been careless, trying to send a message. Fear is a sharp blade. It cuts deeper when wielded against your home. I told myself not to be frightened. I reminded myself of every small victory, the counts I had secured, lawyer I had spoken to, the agent delaying viewings. But fear lodges like a pebble under your shoe. It bothers you constantly. When I told Miriam, she came quickly, face set like a shield. We'll call the police, she said. I shook my head. Calling the police could escalate things, draw attention, and possibly convince Daniel to act faster. Now this was something I had to handle quietly. So I did the only thing I could. I hardened my face, made it look like the visit was nothing, mended the pot myself, and planted fresh flowers. I left when the neighbor asked if I was all right, and she nodded, satisfied with my bravado. If they wanted me to be fragile, play the part, but I would not be crushed. However, the scare had consequences. Clara became viciously attentive. She started following me on short walks, commenting on my shoes, my steps, the way I posed to tie my scarf. Once, while I was at the market, she cornered me by the bread stall. You shouldn't be walking so much, she said, tone thin. You could fall. Her hand hovered for a moment on my shoulder. Her touch felt clinical, like she was testing my weakness. I realized that they were preparing another move in a sale this time, but a staged emergency. Might try to force a medical incident to justify moving me immediately. If that happened, they could take control of my things while I was vulnerable. I needed to block that. I doubled down on the safety net. I made sure the lawyer had power of attorney, drafting notes, redying it for them. For me, I met the agent secretly and warned him that any attempt to speed the sale could be legally contested. I asked Miriam to keep watch on the night, but the closer I got to the finish line, the more obstacles surfaced. My doctor called to say some tests needed repeating. I smiled and agreed, but the timing felt suspicious. Was Daniel using his influence? I remembered an old friend in the clinic. People spoke their petty favors quietly. More trouble came from within. I had banked hope on Clara's arrogance. I assumed she would be careless, but Clara grew wary. She started looking through drawers when she thought no one watched. Once, I caught her hand near the box marked keepsakes. She smiled politely and withdrew, but the look in her eyes was a warning. You could see the thought, I will not be thwarted. So I had to become bolder. I decided to force a confrontation in public to test them, to let them show their true selves. I called a small family lunch, told Daniel and Clara I wanted to talk about the move face to face. I invited Sarah and Miriam, people I trusted. I wanted witnesses. Presence would make it hard for them to act underhandedly. The lunch began with false smiles. Daniel and Clara sat across from me, both composed like actors. I spoke softly, recounting memories. Do you remember when Daniel fell into the river and I pulled him out? I said, watching their reactions. Their smiles tensed. I let them breathe false comfort. Then I set my trap. I casually mentioned loud enough for Sarah and Miriam to hear that I had been talking to a lawyer. Clara's fork halted midair. Daniel's face tightened. They both thought it was a bluff. Mom, what lawyer? Daniel said, voice low. But just someone who helps old people understand papers, I said, smiling sweetly. I was worried someone would take advantage of me. Miriam leaned forward, eyes bright with suspicion. Sarah's jaw clenched. Clara tried to laugh it off, her voice light. We only want what's best for you, but her fingers trembled. That afternoon, the agent called again. "We have an offer," he said. I felt my blood freeze, but then he added, "They want to see the wiring papers and the original deed. Could you get them ready?" That bought me a sliver of time. Deed was in my safe place, in the bank, under my name. Even if they tried, they would need paperwork they did not have. However, the real obstacle came when Daniel acted raw with emotion. He stood up, face flushed, and said, "Mom, why are you doing this? Why bring up lawyers? You're making everything harder." His voice cracked, and I wasn't sure if it was anger or guilt for a moment. It looked like he might realize the cruelty of what he was doing. And then Clara's hand found his knee beneath the table. She squeezed it like a signal. "Don't be soft." Daniel inhaled, swallowed, and Saturday back down. The human thing he might do apologize. Stop was buried under her control. I left that lunch with more resolve than fear. They had shown their true colors in public. Under pressure, Daniel could still falter, but Clara steadied him. That was both a problem and an opportunity. If Clara steadied him publicly, perhaps I could expose Clara her greed, her least to people who mattered, the agent, the lawyer, the neighbors. I had arranged the last piece, the recordings, the bank alerts, the deed in the bank, and a meeting with the estate agent the next morning where I planned to reveal everything. If the agent took me seriously, he might delay further. If he didn't, then the lawyer and I had other routes: public exposure, a temporary injunction, or even a small-town outcry. That night, I laid out the evidence again. The weight felt heavy on the table, but lighter on my heart. For the first time, I felt not like a victim, but like a person with agency. The plan was dangerous, yes, but it was honest. I would not shame or hurt anyone more than their own choices had hurt me. The night before the agent's meeting, I hardly slept. The text message echoed in my mind. "We know about the recordings. Who had sent it? Daniel, Claire, or someone they had hired to frighten me?" But instead of fear, a strange calm came over me. If they knew about the recordings, then they were nervous, and nervous people make mistakes. At dawn, I packed my small handbag carefully. Inside, I placed a flash drive with copies of the recordings, overdraft alerts, and Clara's careless admissions. I left the originals locked in a box at Miriam's house, just in case. One thing life had taught me: always have a backup. When I arrived at the estate agent's office, Daniel and Clara were already there. Their smiles were thin, stretched, brittle. Daniel's tie was crooked, Clara's lipstick too bright. They looked like gamblers putting on their best face before the cards turned against them. The agent greeted me warmly, but when I sat her down, Clara's eyes shot daggers. "Mom, why are you here?" she hissed. "You don't need to worry about this." I smiled sweetly, my hands folded in my lap. "I just wanted to understand what's happening with my home. After all, it belongs to me." Daniel shifted in his chair. The agent coughed awkwardly. "Mrs. Liya, of course you have a say, but your son assured us this was a smooth process." That was my opening. I leaned forward, pulled the flash drive from my bag, and set it on the table. "Then perhaps you should listen to what I have recorded in my own home." Daniel's face drained of color. Clara tried to laugh. "Mom, what are you doing? These silly recordings." But I pressed play on my phone. Daniel's voice filled the small office. "Once Mom moves out, we can sell the house. The market is high. We'll finally have the money for the bigger place." The room went silent, except for my son's voice betraying himself. The agent's eyes widened. "Mr. Daniel, you told me this was for your mother's care." Daniel stammered. "It was," but Clara cut in, sharp as glass. "This doesn't prove anything. Families talk all the time." I pressed play again. Clara's cold voice. "It's not about what she needs. It's about what's best for us all." The agent leaned back, disgust plain on his face. He closed the folder in front of him. "I cannot proceed with this sale. Not under these conditions. If Mrs. Liya does not give consent freely, this deal is finished." Daniel shot up from his chair. "You can't do this," he shouted, his voice cracking. "We need," but Clara pulled at his sleeve, whispering urgently, her face pale. I stood calmly. My hands no longer trembled. "I may be old, Daniel," I said softly, "but I am not weak. You will not steal my life's work." The agent excused himself, clearly unwilling to be part of this family war. As soon as he left, Clara exploded. "You ruined everything," she hissed at Daniel. "Everything." Daniel rubbed his forehead, hissing like a trapped animal. I watched them both, feeling not pity, but clarity. For years, I had blinded myself with love, but now I saw the truth with perfect vision. They were partners in greed, not in love. The fallout began the moment we left the agent's office. Clara stormed ahead, refusing to look at me. Daniel walked behind, shoulders slumped, his anger dissolving into something else. For that evening, he came to my house alone. His knock was softer than usual, almost timid. I opened the door and found him standing there, eyes red. He looked less like the man who had tried to sell me out, and more like the boy I once cradled after nightmares. "Won't," he whispered. "Please, let me explain." I let him in, but I didn't smile. I Saturday at the table, the same table where I had taught him to write his name. He Saturday across from me, his hands shaking. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "Clara, she pushed me. We're in debt. Won't. I didn't know what else to do. I thought if I sold the house, it would fix everything." I stared at him, my silence heavier than any words. He squirmed, desperate. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Please forgive me. I'll stop the sale. I'll take care of you. Just don't leave me. Won't. I can't lose you." And Ting did something I never thought I would see. He dropped to his knees on the kitchen floor, my proud, arrogant son, on his knees, begging me like a child. "Please, Won't. I need you. I can't do this without you." For a long moment, I said nothing. My heart ached, torn between the mother who wanted to gather him in my arms and the woman who had been betrayed so deeply. Finally, I spoke, my voice steady. "Daniel, you didn't just betray me. You betrayed yourself. You let greed poison your heart. Do you think tears can erase that?" He bowed his head, sobbing quietly. "I'll make it right. Please, tell me what to do." I leaned forward, my eyes sharp. "Stand up, Daniel. If you want redemption, you'll have to earn it. Not with words, not with tears, but with actions. Real actions." He nodded, desperate, wiping his face. But inside, I wondered, was this real remorse, or just fear of losing what he wanted? The house was quiet again after Daniel left, but the echoes of his sobs lingered. I Saturday in the dark, thinking, a part of Meth Park that remembered his little hands holding mine, his laughter in the garden wanted to forgive, but another part, the part carved from weeks of pain and humiliation, whispered, "Don't let him escape so easily." Miriam came the next morning. I told her everything about Daniel on his knees, about his tears. She listened, her eyes soft. "He's still your son, Liya," she said gently, "but you're right not to trust words alone. Let him prove himself." Her words settled in me like seeds. Yes, proof. That was the only path forward. Over the next weeks, Daniel did try. He visited often, alone, without Clara. He brought groceries, fixed the leaky tap, even painted the old gate, but every time, I could see guilt gnawing at him. And Clara, she never came back. The gossip around town said she had left him, angry that the big house plan had fallen through. It was strange watching the same man who once tried to erase me now mow my lawn, wash my dishes, and begged for another chance. Strange, but not unearned. One evening, as the sun set golden through the window, Daniel Saturday with me quietly. He looked thinner, his pride stripped away. "Mom," he said softly, "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it if you let me." I closed my eyes, my heart heavy. Revenge had brought me justice. Yes, it had made him kneel, had broken his pride, but it hadn't erased the wound. Nothing ever would. Finally, I took his hand. "Daniel, I raised you with love, and love does not disappear, but betrayal leaves scars. If you want my forgiveness, it won't come today. It will come when your actions prove you are worthy again." His eyes filled with tears, but this time, he didn't beg. He only nodded. That was enough. I looked around my whole same walls I had feared to lose. They stood strong. Like me, I had survived betrayal. I had turned weakness into power, and in the end, I had gained not just revenge, but clarity. I turned to Daniel, my voice firm but gentle. "Remember, this family is not about blood alone. It's about loyalty, sacrifice, and respect. You lost that once. Don't lose it again." He bowed his head. "I won't, I swear." That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on everything. Revenge had given me justice, but forgiveness, slow, careful forgiveness, might give me peace. Perhaps one day, Daniel would earn his way back into my heart fully. Perhaps not, but either way, I had already won. Because I was no longer the helpless old woman they thought I was. I was Liya, and I had made my betrayer beg on his knees.